They say trust is built over years, but destroyed in seconds. I'm about to show you how one signature can unravel an entire life. This is the story of a woman who thought she knew her husband, until the night a stranger at table 5 called her by the wrong title. Not wife, but the other woman. And what she did next wasn't revenge. It was clarity. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Sharon O'Neill was 38 years old when her world shifted on its axis. Not with an earthquake, but with a whisper. She was a graphic designer, the kind of person who could spot a pixel out of place from across the room. Her job was about precision, about seeing what others missed. She spent her days adjusting kerning on corporate logos and making sure every element in a layout had its proper place. She believed in order, in structure, in the idea that if you built something carefully enough, it would stand forever. That belief extended to her marriage. She and Joshua Goforth had been together for 6 years, married for 4. They met at a tech conference in Austin, where he was presenting on project management strategies, and she was designing the event materials. He was the kind of man who wore his confidence like a well-tailored suit, always pressed, always ready. He wasn't particularly creative, but he was organized, methodical. He knew how to present himself. And Sharon, who spent so much of her life behind a computer screen, found something appealing in his certainty. He made decisions quickly. He didn't second-guess himself. In a world where Sharon often found herself lost in the infinite possibilities of design choices, Joshua's directness felt like solid ground. They built a life together in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Charlotte, North Carolina. Nothing extravagant, but comfortable. They had routines. Saturday morning coffee at the local cafe. Sunday evenings cooking together while listening to old jazz records. Joshua worked as a mid-level project manager at a regional tech firm called Apex Solutions. The pay was decent, enough to cover their bills and save a little each month. Sharon freelanced from home, taking on branding projects for small businesses and startups. It wasn't glamorous, but it was theirs. Or so she thought. The first sign appeared on a Tuesday evening in late September. Sharon was working late on a logo redesign for a craft brewery when Joshua came home from work. This wasn't unusual. What was unusual was that he went straight to the bathroom without greeting her. She heard the shower running for nearly 20 minutes. When he emerged, his hair was wet, and he was wearing a fresh shirt. Sharon looked up from her screen. "Long day?" she asked. Joshua nodded, distracted, checking his phone. "Yeah, just had some after-work meetings. You know how it is." She did know how it was. But something about the way he said it felt rehearsed, like he'd practiced the line before walking through the door. She noticed he was fixing his collar in the hallway mirror, adjusting it 3 times, each time with more precision. Joshua had never been particularly vain. He dressed well for work, but he didn't fuss. This was different. "You going somewhere?" Sharon asked, trying to keep her tone light. "No, just want to look presentable. Never know who you might run into." He smiled at her then, the same smile he always gave her. But Sharon found herself analyzing it the way she would analyze a design. The curve of his lips was right. The crinkle at the corners of his eyes was there. But something about the composition felt off. Like a font that was almost right but didn't quite match the brand. She told herself she was being paranoid. That working alone all day was making her overthink simple interactions. But the feeling didn't go away. Over the next few weeks, the composition of their life began to change in small, almost imperceptible ways. Joshua started going to the gym 3 times a week. He bought new cologne, something expensive with notes of cedar and bergamot. He began talking about work differently, using phrases like networking opportunities and strategic positioning. One evening in early October, Sharon was in the kitchen making dinner when she heard Joshua on the phone in the bedroom. His voice was low, careful. She couldn't make out the words, but she recognized the tone. It was the voice he used when he was trying to impress someone, trying to sell himself. She stood by the doorway, listening. "I completely agree," Joshua was saying. "Family values are the foundation of any successful organization. That's something I've always prioritized." Sharon frowned. Joshua had never talked about family values before. They'd never even discussed having children. It was one of those topics they'd both quietly shelved, neither of them particularly eager to disrupt their comfortable routine. Who was he talking to? The conversation continued. "Stability is key," I think my track record speaks for itself. His track record? Joshua was competent at his job, but he wasn't exactly climbing the corporate ladder at lightning speed. He'd been in the same position for 3 years. When he emerged from the bedroom 15 minutes later, Sharon was standing at the stove, stirring pasta sauce. "Who was that?" she asked casually. Joshua barely looked up from his phone. "Just a colleague. Work stuff." Sounded important. "It's about a potential promotion. I'll tell you more when it's confirmed." He kissed her on the cheek and grabbed a beer from the fridge. Sharon watched him retreat to the living room, and that feeling returned. The feeling that she was looking at a design where the layers didn't quite align. The name first appeared in mid-October. Sharon was using Joshua's laptop to check her email, since her own computer was updating when a message notification popped up in the corner of the screen. It was from someone saved in his contacts as Ollie. The preview read, "Looking forward to seeing you again soon." Sharon stared at the notification until it disappeared. Ollie. It was a gender-neutral name, which meant nothing on its own. It could be a colleague, a client, anyone, but the phrasing bothered her. Again soon implied they'd already met recently. And looking forward felt personal in a way that business correspondence usually didn't. She closed the laptop without reading further. Part of her knew that if she started digging, she'd find something she didn't want to see. And part of her wasn't ready for that yet. But the name stayed with her. Ollie. Over the next week, she heard Joshua mention it twice. Once on a phone call where he said, "I'll send that to Ollie first thing in the morning." And once when he was texting at dinner and Sharon asked who he was talking to. "Just Ollie from the executive team," he'd said. "We're working on some new initiatives." Executive team. Joshua was a project manager. He didn't typically work directly with executives. Sharon nodded and said nothing. But that night, after Joshua fell asleep, she lay awake in the darkness, her designer's eye reconstructing the image she was beginning to see. A man who suddenly cared about his appearance, who talked about family values and stability, who was spending time with someone named Ollie from the executive team. It wasn't a complete picture yet, but the outline was forming. The request came on a Thursday evening in late October. They were sitting on the couch, watching a documentary about deep-sea exploration. Joshua muted the television and turned to Sharon with an expression she couldn't quite read. Serious but not grave. Earnest but practiced. "I need to talk to you about something," he said. Sharon felt her stomach tighten. "Okay. There's a promotion opportunity at work. It's a significant jump, director level. But there's a requirement that's a bit unusual." He paused, like he was choosing his words carefully. "The chairman of the company wants to make sure anyone moving into senior leadership has demonstrated financial stability and responsibility. It's about showing that you can manage resources, plan for the future. That kind of thing." Sharon waited. "They're asking candidates to show proof of available credit. Not debt, but capacity. Like a line of credit or a personal loan that demonstrates creditworthiness." He looked at her directly. "My credit score is good, but not excellent. Yours is better. I was hoping you'd be willing to take out a small personal loan in your name. I'd pay it back immediately, of course. It's just for the optics. To show the board that we have the financial capability." Sharon felt like she was watching this scene from outside her body. She saw herself sitting there, her hands folded in her lap. She saw Joshua, leaning forward slightly, his expression open and hopeful. And she saw the space between them, the negative space, the thing that wasn't being said. "How much?" she asked. 30,000. It was a significant amount. Not life-destroying, but not insignificant either. "And you'd pay it back right away?" "Immediately. I just need to show the documentation to the board. Then we close it out." "Sharon, this promotion would change everything for us. It's a 60% salary increase. We could finally buy a house, travel more. It's what we've been working toward." She wanted to ask why he couldn't just show his savings, his investment accounts, anything else. But she already knew the answer. Joshua lived paycheck to paycheck, just like most people. He had a modest 401k and maybe a few thousand in checking. He didn't have the kind of financial portfolio that would impress a board of directors. But Sharon did. She'd been freelancing for a decade, and she was careful with money. She had savings, investments, an excellent credit score. And now Joshua was asking her to leverage that for his career. "I need to think about it," she said. Joshua's face fell slightly, but he recovered quickly. "Of course. Take your time. I just wanted you to know how much this means to me. To us. That night, Sharon didn't sleep. She lay next to Joshua, listening to his breathing, and she thought about pixels, about how a single misaligned element could throw off an entire composition. And she thought about how sometimes the only way to see the full picture was to let it reveal itself completely. 3 days later, Sharon signed the papers. She did it at a bank branch while Joshua waited in the car, saying he had calls to make. She sat across from a loan officer who explained the terms, the interest rate, the repayment schedule. Sharon barely heard any of it. She was thinking about Joshua's face when she'd finally agreed. The relief that had washed over him had been genuine. But underneath it, she'd seen something else. Something that looked like victory. She signed her name on the line, and the loan officer congratulated her. $30,000 was now sitting in an account in her name, with Joshua listed as an authorized user. He could access it freely. When she got back to the car, Joshua kissed her on the cheek. "Thank you for believing in me," he said. But Sharon noticed his eyes were already on his phone, typing a message to someone. She didn't ask who. She already knew the answer would be a lie. Over the next 2 weeks, Sharon watched the account. Joshua transferred $5,000 out on the first day. Initial presentation to the board, he explained. Another $10,000 went out 3 days later. Follow-up documentation. Sharon didn't ask why the board needed actual money transferred rather than just documentation. She was done asking questions. She was watching, waiting for the full picture to emerge. And then, on a Friday night in early November, the picture came into focus. Sharon was sitting at her desk, working on a website redesign, when Joshua's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. He was in the shower. The screen lit up with a message preview. From Ollie. But this time, the full name was visible in the notification. Alina Severin. Sharon picked up the phone. She didn't unlock it, just stared at the name. Alina Severin. Why did that name sound familiar? She opened her laptop and searched. Alina Severin, Charlotte. The first result was a Society page article from a local magazine. Alina Severin, daughter of Apex Solutions chairman Clinton Severin, announces engagement. The article was dated 2 days ago. Sharon clicked on it. There was a photo of a young woman, maybe 28 years old, beautiful in the way that comes from a lifetime of privilege. Perfect teeth, perfect hair, perfect smile. She was holding up her left hand, showing off a ring. A large diamond set in platinum. The caption read, Alina Severin celebrates her engagement to her longtime partner. The couple plans to marry next spring. There was no mention of the partner's name. Sharon's hands were shaking as she scrolled down, looking for more information. Another article, this one from a business journal. Chairman Clinton Severin announces leadership changes at Apex Solutions. The company is promoting several mid-level managers to director positions, with a focus on candidates who demonstrate strong family values and financial responsibility. And there, in the list of candidates being considered, was Joshua's name. Joshua J. Goforth. Everything clicked into place. The sudden interest in his appearance. The conversations about family values. The mysterious Ollie who was actually Alina Severin, the chairman's daughter. The loan that was supposed to prove financial stability. Joshua wasn't trying to impress a board. He was trying to impress a father. He was trying to look like the kind of man who was worthy of marrying into one of the wealthiest families in Charlotte. And he was using Sharon's credit, Sharon's money, Sharon's signature to buy his way into that world. Sharon sat in her home office for nearly an hour, staring at the screen. She felt something she'd never experienced before. It wasn't anger exactly. It wasn't even hurt. It was clarity. Absolute, perfect clarity. She understood now. Every strange behavior, every vague explanation, every carefully rehearsed line. Joshua had been building a second life. And Sharon had been the foundation he was standing on while he constructed it. She opened her email and found the loan documents. She printed them. Then she printed the bank statements showing the transfers. Then she printed the articles about Alina Severin. She organized them in a folder, the way she would organize design files. Neat, labeled, easy to reference. Then she opened Joshua's phone. She knew his passcode. They'd never hidden that from each other. She scrolled through his messages with Alina. They went back 6 months. I can't wait to tell my father about you. He's going to love how stable and responsible you are. I've never met anyone who understands what it means to build a real future. And then, from 3 days ago, my dad likes you so much. Thank you for dinner tonight. Wearing the ring you got me makes me feel like the luckiest woman alive. The ring. The diamond that Sharon had unknowingly paid for. She took screenshots of everything. Not because she was planning to use them in court, though she would, but because she needed to document this. To make it real. To prove to herself that she wasn't imagining it. When Joshua came out of the shower, Sharon was sitting on the couch, the folder on her lap. He smiled at her, completely unaware. "What are you working on?" he asked. "Just organizing some files," Sharon said. "Actually, I was wondering if you're free tomorrow night. I thought we could go out to dinner. Maybe that new place you mentioned, the upscale one across town." Joshua's face brightened. "Really? I didn't think you'd be interested in that place. It's pretty expensive." "I think we should celebrate your promotion," Sharon said. "You've been working so hard. You deserve it." He kissed her on the forehead. "Tomorrow night sounds perfect." Saturday evening, Sharon got dressed carefully. She wore a simple black dress, minimal jewelry. She wanted to look put together, but not memorable. Invisible. Joshua, on the other hand, spent 40 minutes getting ready. He wore his best suit, the navy one he usually reserved for important presentations. He checked his reflection multiple times. "You look nervous," Sharon observed. "Just want to make a good impression," he said. "It's a nice restaurant." They drove separately. Joshua said his car was low on gas, and he'd fill up on the way. Sharon suspected he didn't want to be seen arriving with her. She followed him from a distance, using the GPS on her phone to track his route. When he pulled into the parking lot of Meridian, the upscale restaurant he'd claimed was too far to visit regularly. Sharon parked 2 blocks away. She waited 15 minutes. Then she walked to the restaurant, the folder tucked into her purse. The host greeted her at the door. "Reservation?" "No, I'm meeting someone." "Table 5. The host's expression changed slightly. "Table 5 is currently occupied." "I know," Sharon said. "I'm expected." The host hesitated, then gestured toward the dining room. "Of course." Sharon walked through the restaurant, her heels clicking on the marble floor. She saw them before they saw her. Table 5, in a semi-private alcove. Joshua was sitting across from Alina Severin. She was even more beautiful in person, radiant in a cream-colored dress. Her left hand was resting on the table, the diamond catching the light from the chandelier above. Next to her sat an older man in an expensive suit, Clinton Severin, the chairman. Joshua was leaning forward, his posture perfect, his expression earnest. He was performing, playing the role of the stable, responsible future son-in-law. Sharon walked up to the table. For a moment, no one noticed her. Then Alina looked up, her smile polite but confused. "Can I help you?" Joshua turned. His face went white. "Sharon." Clinton Severin looked between them, his expression sharpening. "Joshua, who is this?" Sharon didn't wait for him to answer. She reached into her purse and pulled out the folder. She placed it on the table, right next to Alina's hand with the ring. "My name is Sharon O'Neill," she said, her voice calm. "I'm Joshua's wife." The silence that followed was absolute. Alina's smile vanished. Clinton Severin's hand moved to the folder. "His wife," Alina repeated. Sharon nodded. "We've been married for 4 years. But I don't think Joshua mentioned that to you." She opened the folder. "These are loan documents. As you can see, Joshua recently had me sign for $30,000 under my name. He told me it was a requirement for a promotion at Apex Solutions. To demonstrate financial stability." She slid the bank statements across the table. "These show the transfers he made from that account, including a $10,000 withdrawal on October 15th. The same day, according to social media, that you received your engagement ring." Alina's hand moved to cover the ring, as if hiding it could undo what Sharon had just said. "This isn't what it looks like," Joshua started, but Clinton Severin held up a hand. "Let her finish." Sharon met his eyes. "Your daughter seems like a lovely person. And I'm sure Joshua told you he was a man of strong family values and financial responsibility. But the truth is, every dollar he's used to impress you came from me. My credit, my name, my signature. If you're investing in him as a future son-in-law, you should know you're investing in a man who's essentially living off his wife while courting another woman." Alina stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "Is this true?" she asked Joshua, her voice shaking. Joshua was frozen, his mouth opening and closing without sound. He looked like a man whose stage had just collapsed beneath him. "Alina, I can explain," he finally managed. You're married, she said, her voice rising. You're married, and you used your wife's money to buy me a ring? Clinton Severin closed the folder carefully. When he spoke, his voice was ice. Joshua, I think you should leave. Now. Sir, please, if you'll just listen, leave. And on Monday, you can meet with HR to discuss your immediate suspension pending review. This company has no place for men who lack integrity. Joshua looked at Sharon then, and she saw something in his face she'd never seen before. Not anger, not guilt, just terror. Pure, unfiltered terror at watching his carefully constructed future crumble in real time. He stood up slowly. Sharon, please, he whispered. Can we talk about this? No, she said simply. We can't. He left. Sharon didn't watch him go. She was looking at Alina, who had tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, Sharon said quietly. I know this isn't your fault. You didn't know. Alina shook her head, pulling the ring off her finger. I should have asked more questions. I should have seen. You can't see what someone works that hard to hide, Sharon said. Believe me, I know. Clinton Severin looked at Sharon with something that might have been respect. Ms. O'Neill, I apologize that my company's promotion process was used to facilitate this deception. If there's anything I can do. There is one thing, Sharon said. The loan is in my name. I'd like to start working with your HR department to freeze Joshua's access to that money and ensure he's held accountable for the transfers. Consider it done. Sharon thanked him, then turned to leave. But Alina called after her. Wait, what are you going to do now? Sharon paused. Move forward. That's all any of us can do. She walked out of Meridian feeling lighter than she had in months. Behind her, she could hear Alina crying and Clinton Severin making phone calls. But that wasn't her story anymore. That was theirs to sort out. The next 2 weeks were a blur of paperwork. Sharon canceled the authorized user access on the loan account. She contacted a divorce attorney, a sharp woman named Maria Ellison, who took one look at the documents and said, This is cut and dried. He committed fraud. You'll be fine. The divorce papers were filed on a Tuesday. Sharon had them delivered to Joshua at work. Or rather, at his parents' house, where he'd moved after being suspended from Apex Solutions. She heard through mutual friends that Alina had called off the engagement and returned to New York, where she'd been living before moving back to help her father with the business. That Clinton Severin had made it clear throughout the company that Joshua's behavior was unacceptable and that integrity was non-negotiable. That Joshua had tried to call Sharon 47 times in the first 3 days, leaving voicemails that ranged from apologetic to angry to desperate. Sharon listened to the first one. Then she blocked his number. By December, Sharon had moved to a new apartment. Smaller but brighter. The windows faced east, flooding the space with morning light. She set up her design studio in the spare bedroom, investing in a new monitor and a Herman Miller chair she'd always wanted but felt was too expensive. Now, with Joshua out of her life, she could afford it. Her freelance work picked up. Word spread that she was available for larger projects, and she signed a 6-month contract with a tech startup that needed complete brand development. The money was good. Better than good. On Christmas Eve, Sharon sat in her new apartment, drinking wine and working on a logo design. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. She almost didn't check it, but curiosity won. It was from Alina Severin. Ms. O'Neill, I wanted to reach out and say thank you. What you did that night was brave. You saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life. I hope you're doing well. If you ever need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. You deserve every happiness. Sharon read the message 3 times. Then she replied, Thank you for saying that. I hope you're finding your own path forward. We both deserve better than what he offered. She sent the message and set her phone down. Then she returned to her work, adjusting the kerning on a word mark until it was perfect. By the following spring, Sharon had nearly forgotten what it felt like to share her space with someone else. She woke up when she wanted. She ate dinner at her desk if she felt like it. She spent entire weekends working on passion projects without having to explain herself to anyone. One Saturday in April, she was at a coffee shop working on sketches when a man approached her table. Tall, with kind eyes and a hesitant smile. Excuse me, I don't mean to bother you, but I couldn't help noticing your work. I'm Jared Smith. I run a small design agency downtown. We're always looking for talented freelancers. Would you be open to grabbing coffee sometime to discuss potential collaboration? Sharon looked up at him, then at the card he was holding out. She thought about Joshua, about how she'd met him at a professional event, how she'd been charmed by his confidence. But she also thought about how she'd rebuilt herself from nothing, how she'd learned to trust her own vision. "I'd like that," she said, taking the card. "But just so we're clear, I'm only interested in professional collaboration. Nothing personal." Jared laughed. "Understood. I'm actually married, happily. Just always looking for good people to work with." They exchanged numbers. No expectations, no hidden agendas. Just two professionals who might be able to help each other. It was refreshing. That evening, Sharon stood at her window, watching the sunset paint the city in shades of gold and pink. She thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, sitting in her old apartment, signing papers for a man who saw her as nothing more than a stepping stone to a better life. She thought about Table 5, about the moment she'd placed those documents on the table and watched Joshua's carefully constructed facade crumble. Some people might call what she did revenge, but Sharon knew better. Revenge implied she'd done it to hurt him. But that wasn't why she went to that restaurant. She went because she needed to stop being complicit in her own deception. She went because the only way to truly move forward was to refuse to carry the weight of someone else's lies. And in doing so, she'd given herself something far more valuable than revenge. She'd given herself clarity, freedom, the ability to wake up every morning and know that the life she was building was entirely her own. Let me ask you something. If you found those loan documents, if you discovered your partner was using your name, your credit, your signature to build a life with someone else, what would you have done? Would you have confronted them privately, hoping to salvage what was left? Or would you have walked into that restaurant, knowing it would blow up everything, but also knowing it was the only way to reclaim yourself? Think about Sharon's choice. She didn't scream. She didn't make a scene. She simply revealed the truth and let the consequences unfold naturally. Do you think that took more courage than confronting Joshua alone? Do you think people like Joshua ever truly change? Or are they just performers who move on to the next stage when the current one collapses? And here's maybe the harder question. How many of us stay silent when we see the pixels that are out of place? How many times do we ignore the signs because we're afraid of what we'll find if we look closer? Sharon spent months watching her husband build a second life. She saw the signs, but she didn't act until she had the full picture. Was that wise or was it dangerous? Could waiting have cost her more than it did? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments. Tell me what you would have done. Tell me if you've ever been in a situation where you had to choose between confronting a painful truth or protecting yourself from it. And if this story resonated with you, if you felt Sharon's quiet strength or understood her need for clarity over chaos, then subscribe to this channel. Because next week, we're bringing you the story of a woman who discovered that her late husband's business partner was actually his second family, and the inheritance she thought was hers had been split long before she ever knew it existed. Until then, keep your eyes on the details. The truth is always there, hiding in the pixels we choose to ignore. The question is, when will you be ready to see it?